So next topic is about resource addressing. Resource addressing is nothing but specifying the name of another resource within your resource block. So in this case, inside the storage accounts block, we are specifying as your RM resource groups name within it. So that is the basic idea about it. So we are specifying that we want the same name of the resource group to be extracted from the resource group block, and the location also should be the same as that of the resource block. Also, there are so many different Terraform functions that you can make use of to set the values of variables in your Terraform code. Now, in our code, we specify resources in certain order. So, do you think that the resources are also um, deployed in the same order? Actually, that's not the case. So, Terraform automatically figures out the order of the resources. So, what it does is that Terraform will analyze your TF files, all of them, and it will build a dependency graph based on that. So, for example, always a storage account can be created only after a resource group is created. So, it will create a dependency graph of that sense, and based on that graph or based on that order, it will start creation. Sometimes there might be certain resources which needs to be created parallelly. So if there are two resources that don't depend on each other, then Terraform can create those resources in parallel to save time. One more thing we need to understand is sometimes when you want to specify from your end that you want this resource to be created only after another resource, then you can use a parameter called as depends on, that can be included as a part of your block, and say that you can say that storage account depends on resource group, which we know by default Terraform will go in that order, but there are certain resources which maybe the order is the other way around and you want it to happen in a certain way, so then you have to forcefully do that. So that is when you do use the depends on parameter. The next section of Terraform is dynamic blocks. So dynamic blocks are used when you want to generate repeated nested blocks dynamically based on input data, like a loop which is inside a resource block. So let's do this with an example. So here, if you have a resource, um, let's take this example. So here there is a resource called as AWS security group that is created, and inside that you have a dynamic block called as ingress, and based on the parameters that you get from ports, the values that you get from ports, these are the values that gets created. So your ports value may have an input of this. So let's take var of ports have these values 22, 80, and 443. So when 22 is passed, you will see that um, for each, right? So ingress dot value is this. Ingress dot value is